Hey everyone, this is Adam from the Little Music Podcast. This is last week's episode. If you want to listen to this week's episode, it's currently available right now on our Patreon. So if you want to hear that, consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Little Music Podcast. But if not, enjoy the show. Welcome to episode 1 of Little Music Podcast. This is a podcast made by independent artists who kind of know what they're doing for independent artists who kind of don't know what they're doing. I'm your host, Adam from Keep It Inside.
And I'm Kevin from Castro.
Also, if you could take some time to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or rating on Spotify, that'd be great. It means a lot to us.
It'd really help us out, especially since we're just starting out.
If you'd like to be a part of our Patreon, we got one on patreon.com/Little Music Podcast. Since this is our first podcast thing, I was thinking we could do a tradition kind of that we could do like, I think every month would be pretty good.
Yeah. Just to check in.
Just to check in. I also want, so my idea is like, we ask each other, how's your little music thing going? And that way we can update each other on, because we never see each other.
Yeah.
Like, this is the first time I'm seeing you in a very long time.
I know, it's crazy.
And I want to know how it's going with your music.
Yeah.
And also for our audience to hear, like, how many monthly listeners you got right now. And
what do you got coming up?
What do you got coming up? How many songs have you released? Like, who are you?
Yeah.
And why should I listen to you?
Why should I care?
Yeah.
What these two idiots have to say about my music.
Yeah, so I'm going to start off, ask you, how's your little music thing going?
It's been going pretty crazy. I mean, 2022 was like the most... Every year I thought I'm hitting the ceiling, but then 2022 came around and then just shattered my world. The typical case right now, you have something that just goes viral on TikTok,
Yeah.
But where that led me is I'm sitting at around 1.6 million monthly listeners right now. And,
Do you have the current stats, Connor?
So, Castro, monthly listeners, 1,668,146. Followers, 6,983.
Oh, God.
Dang. Wow.
Those numbers don't sound real to me.
All right. And so how long have you been doing music?
It's been around, I think this year will start around year 7 for me.
Year 7? Awesome. And you're doing like mostly music production, but now going into
vocal stuff. I started off doing instrumental hip hop, kind of the typical, I started doing like lo-fi hip hop, chill hop sort of stuff. And then I just started going deeper into more, once I started learning about the SoundCloud scene and going deeper in that, I was really inspired by just all the different music that's available, and then I started doing ambient trap, wave music, and then to where now I've now been inspired to start writing rock music. Yeah. I've been really inspired to start singing.
There's a lot of different genres.
Yeah.
How many projects have you released?
I think now there's a running count in my head. It's around project wise. And again, this could include albums or EPs. But I think I'm at around 20 projects, 20 to 20.
That sounds small, but I want you to expand on how many songs have you made?
In terms of what I've published,
yeah,
it's over 250 songs. I know it's intense, and I know I've put out too much.
You guys are gonna be amazed at how much that I've done compared.
Well, for me, I almost think it was I've put out too much just because I just love doing music and I love sharing it. It's and I really do believe in I'm of the opinion of always publishing, your work just because that's your portfolio.
All right, so let's solidify.
All right, that's me.
You did what was the number again? 1.6 million monthly listeners and about 6,000. What?
7,000.
So about 7,000 followers right now.
That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
That's just to give some context of the screenshot as we're recording this right now.
And then,
how's your little music thing going?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. So
see what I'm doing there.
Currently, what are my monthly listeners?
133,251 monthly listeners.
Wow, it's going down.
And
No.
18,814 followers.
And that's going up.
Yeah. Yes.
These are only Spotify numbers.
Yeah, only Spotify numbers. And this is basically to be transparent, but also kind of keep a record, like a track record going to see what are the things that we're doing to improve ourselves, what's going wrong if things are going downhill.
Because this is stuff that we're like, this sort of advice that we're going to be giving, like we're following it too. Like we're not just trying to tell you, hey, do this. It's like, we're also doing this too, you know?
And then to close it off, how long have I been doing it? I've been doing it about 8 years, including before I did production songwriting. I was doing an indie folk band and an alternative band. And then how much music do I have released? I believe it's around 40 to 50 songs in the 8 years.
I mean, here's the thing, like, that's
like,
really good because even if you were to divide that, you know, that's like 7 to 8 songs, and it's like, if you were to think about it, like, that's a full project if you were to combine all of them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and these are singles, so it's like, that's a consistent output.
Yeah, I've been putting just mostly singles out.
So I guess that will lead us into our topic of the day, our first segment.
So we're just talking about numbers.
Yeah.
And I know for me, it affects me a lot to see my monthly listeners go up and down like a roller coaster, as I'm sure going up and down like a regular roller coaster.
I mean, for me, well, here's the thing. For me, it's like I've just been on a climb, and you know that's great, but it's getting scarier because it's like you just have this. It feels like for
you're
me,
like expecting.
Well, I'm expecting the fall. Like
Yeah.
I'm expecting the downfall because I'm aware of where my numbers came from. Of just I'm proud of it, and I'm grateful for all the opportunities that it's like allowed me and how I've grown through this past year. But it just feels like this creeping, like I'm on the roller coaster and I'm just waiting and I'm waiting and waiting for that drop, but it's not coming. And you know, it's like there comes its own, like, you know, all that glitters isn't gold sort of thing. It's like, it's easy to kind of look at that. And I'm not trying to say it's like, you know, boo-hoo, I'm, you know, finding this like pocket of success, but I'm aware and I've been here long enough to know trends come and go, you know, I think, and that's what we kind of see with what we mean by these numbers. It's like they fluctuate, you know, we're very aware of that.
I think for me, I found that the monthly listeners thing quickly became like a defining factor of how willing am I to go out of the way to like talk to somebody. Very LA of me, but it's like when I see an artist or something or someone that comes to me, the first thing I'm doing is checking them out and seeing like how their music is, but also how are they doing in terms of monthly listeners. And I think that's been a pretty toxic thing for me to like internalize all the time, because I'm just viewing worth.
Yeah, you just start reducing people
listener
as numbers, you know.
And monthly listeners isn't the most important gauge of well, I feel the most important gauge of an artist.
100%. You know, and if anything, use me as an example. Like I'm very aware of like how the disconnect now of that value. And I don't say that to be so cynical to myself, but it's just like, you know, you see these large numbers and, you know, because what brought me kind of back down to earth was just realizing, okay, like, let me also see the test of time, because that's always going to be the great equalizer. And then, you know, I'm looking towards the people I look up to and, you know, the people I'm the biggest fan of. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like they're making music that I love. You know, I'm listening to music from artists that have like made me feel like deep emotion and like I've cried to their music sort of thing. And it's like, yeah, they may have like 1/5 or 1/6 of whatever numbers I have, or whatever other big artists, but I'm able to see that they clearly have been doing this for like more than a decade. They have such a consistent output and quality, and they've really built not just listeners, but they've built their community. They've built their fans, and it's like that is something that you can always work towards. It exists outside of these metrics, you know? Yeah.
So I wanted to break down the numbers to see what it means.
Yeah.
Like
to kind of help navigate, you know,
what each kind of number that Spotify gives you at least, what those mean.
Because they give you a lot.
How does that directly affect us?
Yeah.
So I know the first thing that they give you is the number of streams.
Yeah.
Then they give number of followers, monthly listeners
Yeah.
as well, number of people who saved your song, and number of playlists you've been added to.
Yeah. And this is, by the way, this is all on the Spotify for Artists, the analytics app.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, it's the stuff that if you already are uploading music, which I
Yeah.
would assume, you know, for the people who are listening here are at that level, you've already started to publish your music and you have all these analytics, and, you know, we've kind of learned to like how to navigate through these numbers, because, you know, it's like, it could be it's easy to get lost when you see that whole list, and it's just, you know, wherever you're at, it can be a lot. And it's hard, especially when you have like a long duration and like all these numbers. It's like, what are you tracking? What are you looking like? You can look at the graph, and they give you, what I don't like about the Spotify analytics app is that they give you such a basic graph.
Yeah.
Like the time frame is like 7 days, 28 days, and 2015. Like,
And 2015.
yeah, they started there.
Yeah. So when we're looking at these, because I feel like everyone kind of has like a basic understanding of what each of them mean.
Yeah.
But which is the number that you're focused on the most?
I mean, so what I use for like the day to day that I kind of focus on is like streams, actually. You know what I mean? Like kind of the first number that I'll be looking at if I'm starting my morning or like trying to get a good look after a couple of days is like, oh, I'm tracking really not necessarily how many listeners, but first is like how many streams, because that is like the first number, because that's how you get paid.
Yeah,
You know
the
what I mean?
streams
Like,
directly translate to money.
yeah. And not to say that's like the full point of it, but it's like that's going to be a very useful metric to track, because you can actually see like fluctuations. That it's one thing it's a little bit harder to make that distinction on just how many people are listening, because you can the graphs correlate to each other most often, but it's hard to take one number, especially as something as irregular as like how many people are listening versus like, oh, there were this many streams. So
Yeah,
that's kind
it's
of like
the
on the
difference
first one.
of like how many people are listening to how many
times they
how many
listen.
times have they listened to you, and the times that they're listening to you is more valuable.
Yeah.
Because if you have your monthly listeners could just be the number of people that are listening to you once, and that's representative of something, you know, something different.
Yeah.
So you should be focused on building a stronger community.
Yeah.
Rather than, you know, flexing.
Just the number. Yeah.
Flexing the number.
And that, I guess that kind of leads to my next point of like, there's no set rules to it, but one thing that starts to get a little bit valuable in examining these numbers is starting to look at the ratio of some of these metrics within each other. It's like, especially a common one is like your listener to stream ratio.
Yeah.
And what I was going to lead with that is because you can then start to sort of get an understanding of like, you can kind of get a small insight of like, if you have a bunch of listeners and a bunch of plays, but if you notice that the ratio of it is like 1-to-1, you know, it's not to say there's anything wrong with your music, but you may want to ask that question. It's like, oh, does my music have like that staying power? Or am I just writing music that is a good, like, you hear it once and they're satisfied? Or are you really writing something that's like, oh, wow, like someone's going out of the way to re-listen to this? You know, I guess a tangible example quickly would just be the divide between how, you know, music for like the chill hop playlist or like those study beats. And their music can be written for different purposes, but you'll start to notice like, you know, if you are writing that music and you notice that, you know, oh, it's very like 1-to-1 in my listener to stream ratio, you may realize that it's like, oh, am I just writing music that just gets, you know, that
like
one
put in the
impact,
background,
just
and
put in
then
the
just
background.
like you're just going through it. They don't really know who you are. I think that's the trouble with a lot of at least really big playlists is if people are just listening to the playlist, they're just going to listen through and sometimes not even know that your song is in there or know you for your song, which is, you're still getting the streams, but not really getting the longevity off of that.
And I think that's like the main thing that I think is the focus for that intermediate artist to like
looking at
getting better is like the longevity.
Mm-hmm. For me, what's most important to me, because I'm trying to increase the amount of money that I'm making every month. Streams are also the most important because I can directly gauge even if my monthly listeners are going down currently, I can look at the number of streams and that will tell me how much I'm making, and I can make plans that kind of focus on increasing the number of streams rather than focusing on increasing the monthly listener, because monthly listener is just I don't think it's helpful at all in that you can't plan around it.
Yeah, no.
Because
it's a moving average, too.
Yeah, if your goal is to increase the number of monthly listeners, you get thrown on a playlist for like 1 week, your monthly listeners will shoot up and then shoot back down.
Yeah.
And it has no
your dopamine
indication.
goes up here and shoots back down.
And I've had that experience many years because I have one Christmas song that does well every Christmas period from like November until January.
Yeah.
And every time I'm on a playlist with Lo-Fi Christmas, then like my numbers go astronomically high, and I can feel that I'm doing better. And then once it gets taken off that playlist or nobody listens to Christmas music anymore, then I just also feel the,
the crash.
The inevitable crash that I know is coming, but still hurts nonetheless.
But, in having that happen, it's like, that's where we get our perspective of like,
right.
That's where you really start to learn, like, it's not, there's maybe a grand point that we could make of like, the numbers don't matter, but you really can start, it's like, it's all knowledge that just helps you navigate. And it's like, I don't make any judgment call about whether, caring too much or too little about the numbers. I don't want to be that person who says, just don't worry about them, because they are still important. I mean, if you're already, if you're already doing great in your work ethic, your vision and your goals, it's like, that's the last thing that you really want to be, it's like, it's the last thing that you can like, it's the only thing that you can like care about. And it's just, and it's fine. And it's totally normal. And I think that's what I want to see the change is, where it's, it's not about being so focused on it, but realizing that, hey, take them as the tools that they are. Like, they're metrics to help you guide and gauge where your progress is and how you're developing, and have a healthy relationship.
That's solid, because I hate seeing the numbers, even though I love seeing them grow. I just don't like what it's doing to me mentally every time. And this is a recent development where I'm not as attached to my monthly listeners as I was before, because I know it's going to fluctuate. I know what I'm doing. I know my plans to, increase the metric that I want increase more so than something else. Not saying that monthly listeners aren't important at all. They are an indication of something. It's just not as accurate as number of streams.
They tell such a different story for every artist too. It really just so depends, and it's about finding what it means for you and being able to decouple that from like comparing it. That's why it is a common piece of advice to like not compare yourself, because it really is so different. I mean, even just between the both of us, we've been in the same scene. We've collaborated a lot, but it's like our directions are still very unique to us. And it's like they tell such different stories about where our careers are at,
So I do want to get your opinion on somebody who is not necessarily starting out, but someone who has all the basic stuff. Like, what can they get to level themselves up? Like, step into the next stair on the mountain. Well, before I get your opinion, I want you to think on it.
Okay.
And before we get to that, we can talk about what does that mean, like leveling up your sound, or taking that next step into sounding, better.
I guess for me is like, when I think of what leveling up your sound is and like taking it to that next level, I'm thinking about it in the framework of your music starts to sound like, quality wise, and not just quality in terms of songwriting, but it's like your music starts to sound like the people you listen to, the people that you're looking up to, like in almost physical, not to say objective, but like in a sonic sort of way, where it's like, quality wise, like, and again, I'm trying to use the word quality, not to say like how, if the song is good or not, just more of like the recording, how it's put together. You're talking
in like a production sense.
In a production sense, it's like you start to realize that, wow, like, if you were to put this on the radio, it could sound like anything else on the radio. And I think getting to that metric, not to say that radio level music is the goal, but it's like you do start to sound like the people that inspired you. You notice that it's like, oh wow, like the people that inspired me, or the music I'm trying to emulate, I'm getting there. It's like, and it's becoming matched. That's what I think is my definition.
I feel like for me, I will never get there, just because it's. When you start doing things more, you start noticing like the finer details a lot more. And then for me, I start obsessing over that. And then it's like
Understandable.
if I'm trying to attain this thing,
I've lost my mind many times.
yeah, I'm trying to attain this thing. I'm trying to make it sound almost similar, if not better than this sound. And then, you know, then the train wreck starts happening of like overproducing, over mixing, all that stuff.
Paralysis by analysis.
Yeah, but you're saying leveling up your sound is sounding more like the artist that you look up to.
Yeah. Because I feel like it steps away from necessarily like this pristine production quality, but more of like, if these are the people who are professionals
Yeah.
that you look up to, and not just professionals in the industry, but it's like, if these are the heroes that you look up to and your music really starts to match that, I think that's a good sign of progress.
So
And
your
it's like-
tool that you're thinking of that could help level up the Norman could
the Norman,
could
it's
be
the
like
proper noun instead of Norman. You know,
Yeah.
The Norman. The
is
Nor person.
the Nor person, like the tool that you're thinking of will help, or is something that you use that helps
Yeah.
like make the sound closer to the artist that you like.
I mean, for me, a simple one is monitoring equipment. And for me, especially if you're like a hobbyist, but you're still trying to upgrade, I think for like headphones were like the big game changer for me. Because I was using, always using like earbuds. And it's like, those are good because like you want to monitor your music through even the most common medium. I know a lot of people will recommend like, oh, it's okay to use AirPods for mixing, or it's okay to use like Apple earbuds, because that is one of the most prolific ways people listen to music. So you would think that would make sense, but while that it makes it challenging, but I think in terms of just a good investment for the long run is just a good pair of studio headphones.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great thing that really upgrades just, because you don't need to have a perfectly treated room.
Yeah.
You don't need to have like monitors. Even something in the realm of $60 to $100, you can. It's a game changer. in
Yeah,
my opinion.
I would say for a producer or
Yeah.
a mixer, especially if you're a mixer of any sort, I totally agree with you. I'm on on a different spectrum of like, for me, I've always thought of leveling up as doing less, so that like
that's a good one. Yeah.
if I think as I was beginning or starting
Yeah.
things out, I was taking like the back route of everything
is the hard way.
Right.
I can see that.
Yeah, so I'm like crafting every single sound so that it can sound really cool.
Yeah.
But like to me, it would sound really cool. To everybody else, just a muddy mess. Or be like, oh, the reverb is such an important tool.
You're putting on the master.
Yeah, so I was finding that if I'm getting a tool that will help me create more music, it'll have to be something that takes away time and makes it easier for me to just put stuff in, do minimal editing, and if I want to send it off to a mixer, I can send it off to a mixer, or I could just do it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, a microphone, a
The
really
equipment,
nice
yeah.
microphone for yourself, because I think everything pre-production is important so that during production, you're not like fiddling around so much.
It's interesting
So-
how we kind of have this like, we're looking at it from two different perspectives, but
Yeah.
like to the same like end goal. Where yours is like, as you said, pre-production, and mine is kind of like post-production of like being able to monitor everything
Yeah.
like, cleanly. Where yours is like, let's get it, let's have our inputs and let's not make it hard on us,
Yeah. Well, I'm also like focused more on having recordings, and if you're a
Okay, yeah, I
producer,
forgot.
you think you don't need
Yeah,
as
if you're an
much,
instrumentalist, it's
unless you're like recording guitar or
Yeah.
anything. But yeah, so for me, like this microphone here was a very good purchase, the Shure SM7B. When I started out, I was using
you said the
what was
rock
it,
band
an
mic,
AK.
right?
Oh, I had the Rock Band mic.
I was like, you know what? I'm
But
gonna talk about that.
For I had an AKG P200 or something,
Uh-huh.
which was I think 150 to $200,
Mm-hmm.
and that carried me for I think 5 6 years. Yeah, I think. Well, this one I got relatively recently.
yeah.
But that's like a condenser mic that was a level up from the Rock Band
There we go.
microphone. That kind of, it changed a lot of the quality of my voice. I also didn't need to mess with like the EQ button or the EQ plugin as much. and you could just put it in, do minimal work, and then, you know, yeah. But this one's like $400-500. I would say this is a really good purchase, or even something.
I mean, I was even going to recommend even something like my microphone. It's like, because it's like, it's not to say that, you know, I think that the SM7B is a great choice, but it's just like, you can already start. And I will say though, if you're like an intermediate, you probably have some form of microphone.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that next level.
You'll probably already have a microphone, but if you want to spend some money, I would say SM7B is a good one, especially because like if you look on the set, there's like no acoustic foam or, you know, paneling. I just do.
We're not in a professional studio right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. We are
actually
in a live studio audience.
I know. They're just very quiet.
But there's no like sound treatment in my room, and that's because I don't have the money to do that, or I prioritize my money differently. And that's why I got the SM7B, which is a dynamic mic, which won't pick up a lot of the smaller sounds, and will focus on my voice for the most part.
Yeah, I just bring up like the Shure SM58 just for, I guess, on the beginner side of like, hey, there's still some great options that can really level up your work immensely. Instead of like, there's nothing wrong with like USB microphones, but I think those first step like purchases of like the audio interface, you know, and a solid mic that's in the, you know, if you're buying used, I was able to get this for, you know, $70. A brand new, this is like 110. So
yeah,
I really want to shout out used equipment too.
You were talking about headphones.
Yeah.
What headphones do you use?
I use the Audio-Technica M40X. I know typically people recommend the M50s, but on just a technical note, there's a slight like bass boost to them. The M40s are much more flatter, and that's just something that I'm okay with dealing with because I like to have, again, there's not really an objective sort of thing. I remember there's a quote that was like from this one famous audio mixer that was like, whether they be headphones or studio monitors, they're all lying to you. You just want to choose the one that lies to you the best. You know?
Yeah.
And again, that's not to say there's anything wrong with it, but it's just like they so far fit all my needs, you know, and I'm able to have they really changed up the way I was like monitoring all my music and doing all my mixes. I felt that was like a good step up from what I was using before, which were just these Panasonic $8 earbuds, which I still use to this day for just if I need to just bang out an idea. Because it's just comfortable. Yeah, if I'm just ideas, you know. And it's still good for like doing like different monitors in like my mixes, you know. I think that's something anyone would always recommend is always monitor your music off, you know, cheap earbuds, the car test, the pinnacle of, you know, of music testing.
You mean like referencing,
yeah. So, but headphones for me were that.
Yeah. I have the most trouble with the car test. Because my car has like a significant bass boost that just swallows the entire thing.
Do you have something similar for like your microphone, like with your experiences using the SM7B, or like compared to that AKG and like even beforehand, like the progression of like how you started to feel?
Let's see. I started
more confident or something.
So I started using. I had a karaoke mic. That's like my first mic that I used. And that was one that we've had in the family for a long time, but we usually don't do karaoke nights as much because, you know, family things.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'll just take one for me. And then I just hid it from the rest of my family because they're not going to know. And I just used that microphone for, I think, my first like 2 or 3 years. The Rock Band microphone is a joke. Okay. I ended up not using that, but I did use it for certain songs because I wanted it to sound like that. So
okay. That's cool.
A little different.
Yeah.
But one of the worst mics I've ever worked with. After that, I got the AKG, and that was just a change that I could have never expected. Just because in the beginning, you had a dynamic microphone that just made everything super muffled because for a karaoke machine, you don't really need it to sound good.
It just needs to capture your voice.
Because they like wash your vocals in reverb.
Yeah.
And they just need to catch the pitch so that they can recognize, is it right? Is it wrong?
Yeah.
So that was an incredibly bad microphone. Then the AKG it captured a higher range frequency of my voice. And it also captured like quiet So it allowed me to do like softer vocal takes, and I'm not a very like strong singer, so my falsettos are very quiet. And the AKG was able to pick up on that and accentuate on that. So I made a lot of my music using that. And then now the SM7B, I do want to upgrade even further.
What would be the next, like, that next step for you?
The Neumann TLM 103.
Okay.
I think, or 102 is the one that I'm looking at.
Uh-huh.
That's like the one I want, or now we're getting like, I'm getting like super tech heavy, but
hey,
the AKG C414, I think is another one. I really liked how it sounded when I tested it in the studio. The TLM it seems like very like general.
Are they still
use.
dynamic, or are they now like condenser?
Both of them are condenser mics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I like the condenser mic because of like the environment situation. It's not as reflective, or it doesn't catch reflections as much. And if I'm careful with like how I'm positioning myself or adding like curtains and other stuff, for the most part it does really well.
What's the more expensive one? I don't know if you want to like
out of the two, like the TLM and
which
the
is
AKG?
One that's like, okay, I don't know if I'm gonna have to miss eating.
I think they cost about the same, like $3,000-ish or $4,000. I think in more than like 3,000 range. I think AKG is a little more expensive. I know the Neumann, we looked at it, it was like around 5,000, right?
Yeah.
The U87, right? That one I feel like is unnecessary to go that high. But if I was spending a lot of money, I want to check the price on the TLM 102.
And
like going
while
down
you're doing
every time?
No, I mean, while you're looking at, we have a good amount of time here.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, it's like, let me just reiterate, like, you even as I was saying, like, you don't have to go as low with like, and I don't say that to knock it. I mean, it's an industry standard microphone, but even something like as far as like the SM58, it's like that's quality that is really you can already make professional music. There's been a lot of famous records and recorded with the equipment that we both have.
Yeah.
I know that
Break-ins use the SM7B.
well, not just break-ins, but I know that there's a lot of like, that was like the mic for like the 90s.
Joe Rogan also uses this for recording.
Yeah, but not the SM7B, but I think the OG SM7 sheer microphone. They recorded all of Thriller on that microphone.
Oh, yeah, I do remember hearing about that.
Yeah.
I got the update. It is around $729.
For which one?
For the TLM.
Okay.
So not to the 1,000 range.
Yeah.
AKG 414, definitely. I'm pretty sure it's 1,000 range.
I'm not gonna eat.
Yeah, so
I will skip meals.
That's what I was thinking when I first
dinner.
thought about the TLM. It's like the economical version of like a U87.
Yeah.
Is how I viewed it. I don't know if that's necessarily true.
The cheap knockoff version that
But
still costs.
I'm like
couple
fine
thousand.
because at a certain point, like the upgrade that you get for yourself, I feel like you can get it once and then diminishing returns. You don't need to get anything better unless that's like what you want to do.
And at that point, you'd be at that skill level to know that. Like, I don't think you wouldn't be making these purchases so, I don't know, so loosely. Like, I think to be at that level, it's like you would have already known what are your goals now, and I think that just comes with time.
What was the price for that? 414.
MSRP is 1,600. Sweetwater is 1,300.
We're not sponsored by Sweetwater, by the way.
Sweetwater deal.
Yeah. Sweetwater. Sponsor? All right.
So to sum up, the stats that are important to us for Spotify is number of streams, right?
But not just that.
Not just that, but also like taking into consideration the different ratios.
In respect to each number too.
Yeah, and how and making sure that you're crafting your plan based on
your progression and your number specifically, not what's kind of around you. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And then also, if you want to level up your sound in one way or another, your recommendation was
headphones.
A nice pair of headphones, and for me was a nice microphone to make sure that there's less work going into the input side of things.
These are, and I think of it like these are the stuff that's like you purchase them and they're investments. I really do believe in that sort of stuff. It's like, I'm the sort of person now where it's like, I want to buy, there's like subreddit, it's called like buy it for life. And it's like, that's sort of the philosophy, I think, just because of, how kind of wasteful a lot of things and how we think of purchasing now. But it's like, you can buy used, they're really great equipment. They're really high quality. I think that's like the beauty of like a lot of audio equipment is like, they're really well made, and they'll last you a while. They'll last you a long time. I mean, hell, there's the joke that this is not only a microphone, but it's a hammer. It's
all right. Used to, I think that's enough for today. You can follow us on social media. I'm at Keep It Inside 2 on Twitter, and so many other social media places.
You can follow me at It's Castro, EYYITSKASTRO.
If you want to support us on Patreon, we're on patreon.com/Little Music Podcast, and all the other social media is Little Music. All the social media is Little Music Podcast. Twitter is Little Music Pod. Thanks for tuning in.